How are you, John?
Very well, Nick. How are you?
Awesome. I was reading your bio real quick right beforehand, and it seems like you have done a lot from doing sports in school, acting, and now public speaking at TEDx, which is really impressive.
Well, thank you.
So I want to start with let's talk about your childhood because I feel like that's a lot of a part of us as survivors is our childhood and what we went through there, and then through the other experiences that you went through.
All right. So, do we start whenever we want, or
Yes.
hey, I just want to say your hair looks great. I
Thank
love
you.
it.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. And you can hear everything. We're cool.
Mm-hmm.
Everything looks all right for you.
Yes.
All right. So, where should I start? Just how it all began.
Yes.
I don't know why I'm so nervous, Nick. This is usually I'm usually cool with this. I've been anticipating this all day. All right, so I grew up in a small farm town in Southwest Ohio, and my parents were pretty poor. We were living, paycheck to paycheck, and there were six kids in this old farmhouse. And for somehow, I found diving, and it happened really quickly and naturally. And I started when I was 13. By 15, I had gone to the Junior Olympics and took eighth. And then everyone started looking at me, thinking, "Oh my God, this could be our next Olympian. This could be all these great ideas are coming up." But my mom was worried about money, so the possibilities were really slim. But when I came back from Lincoln, Nebraska, after winning, after at the Junior Olympics, she was approached by a lawyer, and the lawyer presented an offer that she couldn't refuse. And so what it was basically about was that she would give me over to him, and he would introduce me to all these professionals who would also help the family. So, but it, but he had groomed her to the point that she thought this was the only way that I could compete and continue diving. So this all started happening. So what these professionals basically did was they would take me out to dinner, and then when they were finished, they would pass me on to somebody else. So I was getting passed around in this whole cycle kind of thing. And at the same time, this lawyer had started talking to my coach and offered to pay him money if the coach paid more attention to me. And so basically what happened is that the coach started to groom me away from the rest of the team and taking me on trips, introducing me to alcohol. One thing led to another, and then he started his predatory grooming and his sexual abuse on me. So I was being sexually abused by the coach, by the supporters, and by the medical team as I was representing the US. And I was in the process of getting ready to go to the Norway Cup and the Canadian Cup. So the year between 15 and 16 were when it was all this was introduced and started playing out for me, and I didn't know what to do. I remember one time I told my mother I didn't want to go. There we were in the farmhouse, and this car drove up. This really nice town car. I'm sorry, black drove up, and they were going to take me to dinner and whatever was on the agenda. And I told her I didn't want to go. And she asked me why. And I finally thought this is the time I can share with her what was going on, and maybe she could stop it. And I told her that he touched me, and she said, "Where?" And I said, "Down here." And she slapped me across the face.
Wow.
And she told me that this not very nice, and it was sinful to make up lies about people. That this professional was well known in the community, and everybody liked him, and no one would believe this story. And so I figured at that point, I remember at that moment, if I can't get my mom to believe me, no one else will ever believe me.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to shove it all down and keep it quiet. And she also told me that it was my job to help the family. So this was one of the ways that I could help out our family. My youngest sister had a sledding accident and had to have reconstructive surgery on her chin. The doctor provided it for her, no cost to the family. So there was that whole side of it, as well as getting to compete and dive and getting ready to go to Norway, and which ultimately I won the gold medal over there, which was a great surprise to everyone. But then that all just kept leading up, and so this lasted throughout my whole high school year, all the way until I graduated, and then it continued because the professionals were still supporting me through college. So it continued as that, and then after that, I I decided to move to LA and thought I got away from all of that. And yet, behavioral, and I've heard you talk about this, Nick, how behavioral things come back. And I found myself in other situations that were abusive. And I didn't understand why, but it kept coming and kept coming. And so I went through acting and I was being, it was the same thing all over again. So that basically brings us up to that point.
Yeah, it's so terrible when like the people that are closest to you, like your parents, are the ones who are trying to hide it as well and don't believe you because they're the first people you would expect to believe you. And I was reading FBI statistics the other day, and it's only 2 to 10% of people who actually make things up, which means that the majority of people are telling the truth and should be believed.
Especially children.
Exactly. There's no
You know,
reason for a child to make that up and lie about it.
and it's especially if they provide some details. Now, I don't know how other children work, but I know that when the abuse started to happen, I started to disassociate from myself. And so I wasn't able to remember like dates, or sometimes I wouldn't even remember names, but there would be little triggers that I would remember. The color of the carpet, the painting on the wall, a certain smell at that event. So it's like, and that's why so many people quickly ignore or push aside that there's any credibility to these stories because we don't know, and sometimes
Mm-hmm.
they don't come back to the foreground because we push them back so far until later in our life, and then we start to relive them again. And I really believe everybody who's ever been abused or thought that they might have been abused need to seek professional help and go through the process, because if we don't admit it that it happened, we will never admit it later on, which I think leads to a lot of suicides, a lot of depression, a lot of anxieties. People who look like they've got it all together all of a sudden just snap and fall apart. And what is the real reason behind that? I think there's a lot of things that we don't know. And it saddens me that we don't. But people won't talk about it. I know that in Canada, they're a little bit more open about it and they speak about it a little bit more openly. And also in England, they're speaking more about it. But here, it's like we don't talk about it. Males cannot be raped. It's still
Mm-hmm.
the falsified belief. People really still hold on to that. It's not really sexual abuse. It's initiation. It's a rite of passage, and it's all fun. I mean, we had a teacher here in our local school who she seduced 3 sophomores, and the school only heard about it because they were bragging about it at school, and someone
Jeez.
told the principal. She goes to court. She gets off because the parents of the boys wrote letters in her behalf that they had helped make their children men. Now,
What the hell? That is so
yes,
wrong.
if that would have been a young girl, or those would have been girls that were being, abused by men, I think the story would have been different.
Oh,
But
completely. Yeah.
that's what our society does.
Mm. It's just so terrible because people feel like if you don't talk about it, it never happened. But it's just going to get worse. And I've been reading a lot about addiction as well. And a lot of addiction, people who suffer with addiction, it's because they went through something in their childhood. And it's usually child abuse.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we think that abuse or sexual abuse or whatever, child abuse, has to result in sexual intercourse or stuff like that. There are so many different layers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, petting a child at that age could be just as disruptive as a sexual encounter. And I don't think people realize that. Oh, I was just hugging her. Come on. I think there's a lot of problems that we still haven't looked at. We're afraid to, because it ends up that it could be our brother, our uncle, our aunt, or whoever that's right close to the family, grandpa, grandma, whoever it is. And no one is away from it. And I really believe that we have been groomed from the beginning of our lives, from our parents, from our schools, from our government, churches, everywhere around us, we're being groomed. So that's why it's so easy for a predator to come in and groom somebody, because it's really not that different than what's been happening anyway.
Yeah, it seems very normal. It's
Yeah.
normalized.
And the other thing that's really hard for people to identify grooming is that each predator has their own method of doing it, and they adjust it as they're going through. I know I've watched teens where there could be 5 kids, and the groomer is trying to figure out which child he wants to pursue with, and will use different tactics on all 5 children to find out how far they can get. And the craziest thing about it, and I think people need to know this too, is that groomers usually will groom the institution first and get them to be on their side and show how great they are. And then it's the parents next before they ever get to the child. Once they have the parents and the institute behind them, they're pretty free range. They can go because no one's going to want to believe that it's happening in their backyard.
Yeah, because then it's going to be like what your mother said to you. No one's ever going to believe you. People said this person's fine. It's because they groomed the institution as well as the parents first.
Right. Whew. This was so.
I am nervous for you. I'm every time I talk about this, I'm always nervous right beforehand because I'm like I know it is very hard for people to talk about.
But it must be also hard for you to be able to listen too, because of where your story comes from. There are still going to be triggers that might trigger something while you're listening and supporting as we tell our stories. So you need to be commended for that as well.
Yeah. And this is definitely a way for me to heal because I get to hear people's stories and know that I'm not alone, and then I can also comfort them as well.
Great.
Because as long as we're all standing together, no one can defeat us.
Correct. And we're not alone. And I like that you said that. And I think that's the biggest thing for my healing journey was realizing that I'm not all by myself. That there is a huge community out there that are willing to support you and help you and get you the need that you want and the help that you need.
Yeah, there's so many groups just on Facebook alone. And then there's this app that's mostly for business people called Clubhouse, which I recently discovered for iPhone only. And I've gone into some of those rooms and shared my story, and it's really surprising. Well, how many people? Well, actually, it's not surprising now that I realize how many people have faced abuse. It's terrible. I guess is a good way to say it because it's not good to hear that many stories, but it's terrible to hear in some of these rooms how many business people have faced sexual abuse, neglect, emotional abuse. Just there's so many different forms of abuse.
There are.
And
it can happen at any time. That's the
mm-hmm.
other thing that we don't realize. We always think it's usually the young or the beautiful women, but sexual harassment and sexual abuse can happen anytime and in any place.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, we got to be aware of it. We have to make sure we share our stories so that it can be talked about and keep the communication and the narrative moving forward.
And because there's so many different types, it's hard to know where the line is drawn between abuse or just like friends messing around.
Right.
There's friends who like in like football games they'll like smack each other's butts, and that's like something they do as friends. But if you do that to a random stranger, it's completely different. So when there's so many different things, it's like we need to figure out and educate people on where the lines are and different context and stuff like that.
And I think we're beginning to understand that a little bit more with the Me Too movement coming out and Black Lives Matter, and how we can see how, certain ethnic groups can say and do certain things with each other that somebody on the outside comes in and does, and it's offensive.
Mm-hmm,
and we've seen that played out all over. I mean, think about even like the Dixie Chicks when they got in trouble so long ago, by just saying how they felt. And then it was blown out of proportion and taken out of content. But it's one of those things that we have to, I don't know, will there ever be a solution? And the way our government and prosecutions work at the moment is it is all devised and designed by a man. And it's slowly creeping up there, but we still see so many things that are not taken care of because of either fear of what that could mean. And who knows who the judge on the stand could have been sexually abused and never told anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And it can just not want to hear that. And so we have to go with that. And that's what's kind of scary at the same time.
Yeah, and just the whole system being broken because a lot of cases they make more money by siding with the abuser than they do the abused
Right.
because they can drag cases and charge more and all that stuff, and just very wrong and sad that that's something we have to face. I never went to I never legally went after my abuser because I just hope in my heart it was a one and done thing, and I reported to the state, and I felt like by going to the state or going through it legally, well, first of all, it was 11 years ago, so it's past the statute of limitation, which should not exist in the first place.
Correct.
Let's make that clear. um, but I felt like it would be me being spiteful or revengeful rather than actual justice and healing.
But I think it also depends on where you are at that time in your
Yeah.
life. And I don't think you should beat yourself up for not coming forward or not prosecuting, because I think it depends on who you are and what you're standing for. Like you said, you didn't want to become or seem to be revengeful or get even type of thing. And yet, if you're able to heal yourself without having to do that, maybe that's the best thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we watched the U.S. gymnastics and that whole thing blow up in front of our faces. And so many, if it wasn't for Simone Biles standing up and saying, I was one of those girls, would we have gotten the attention that it's gotten? The fact that our Olympians are now saying we're a part of this, and how the Institute completely protected Nasser because he was more important than the girls.
Mm-hmm.
Because there could be another girl come in and take over the place of the one and we saw that happen, and it's just a matter of who's protecting who and why. And in sports, a lot of the time it's the branding, and it's also money, as you just spoke about,
Mm-hmm.
is because they want to protect their own six figures. And if they turn that in, then there's going to be an investigation, and who knows what else will happen. But luckily for us, or for also the women of gymnastics, they didn't give up, and they kept pushing, and they finally got their satisfaction of seeing Nasser go to prison. But the thing that's really also we need to make sure that everybody understands: just because Nasser is put away doesn't mean it's over.
Mm-hmm.
For all those women and men that he abused are just now beginning their healing journey, which will take the rest of their lives. And I don't think our society really thinks that. They think, oh, he's gone and it's all paid over. Everything's fine. It's not.
Yeah, the damage is still done. So you started sharing this, you said about 2 years ago.
Right.
How do you think it's helped you heal from the first day that you shared to now?
Well, let's say this. I think that this last couple of years journey has helped me realize how many lies I've told myself, and all of the false identities that I created to protect myself just to get through the day. And I will still be healing for the rest of my life. I know that. So each day it's like an onion, and you're just peeling the layer back, and there's still another layer. But as you pull that layer back, you find, oh my God, there's still so much to go through. So I think it's a process, and understanding that it is a process and not just a quick, fast healing pill or anything. I'm starting to begin to enjoy the journey. If that makes sense. It
Yeah,
sounds kind of,
definitely.
you kind of admitted it too earlier today, where you're able to sit back and listen to people and share their stories, and you're able to hear that, and you're able to help people. You're reaching out, and you're taking what happened to you and made it into a positive. And that's what I've been trying to do. I think that the healing process is always going to be a big question. Am I healing correctly? But knowing that I have finally started to tear those layers away, I start to find more and more about myself that I like. And those lies that I had, that I'm not good enough, smart enough, or worthy enough, don't stand up anymore. And unfortunately, it's happening while I'm getting older, opposed to when I was younger, and I could have really utilized it. But I guess we should just be grateful we're getting there.
Yeah. And I like that onion analogy a lot. What do you think has been the biggest resource for you in healing?
Oh, let's see. I think The biggest resource is finding that there are other people like yourself out there who are willing to share and take time and listen and not judge. And I think that's the biggest resource. I think we could read every book in the world that we have out there. We can go and listen to everyone speak, but it's got to be an internal um, decision that we make on ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I have decided that I want to change this. I've been a victim for too long, and I hate that word, but that's what it is. It's what we have. But I identified as a victim all my life, and I wouldn't allow myself to do certain things because I thought I wasn't worthy of that. And now that I'm starting to realize that that's not true, things are starting to open up more. It's starting
Mm-hmm.
to happen, which are exciting. I will tell you, I read a book a couple of weeks ago which really shook my world. I don't know if you ever heard of The Shack by
No.
William Paul Young. If you get a chance, read it because it really kind of, there's a lot of religious overtones in it, but it was the fact that we're not alone and we've never been alone. And that's what's really resonated with me. And I started thinking, oh, wow, okay. Then this is interesting. And all the thoughts I had as a kid might be more real than the thoughts I created as an adult.
Huh.
And so going back to visiting where those children parts of me that I disassociated with and try to bring them back in has really been kind of interesting and rewarding. Because I like finding out that, hey, I wanted to be a veterinarian or something. I always had this idea I wanted to heal animals with my hands. I used to believe I could just touch them and they'll be healed. I mean, I don't think that's possible right now. That's my limited. But I still like to think that I can do that. But just things like that. What was my favorite color? Simple things like that. I don't know because I wasn't able to make those choices because I didn't think I could.
Mm-hmm.
Because I gave away so much. Every time an abuse happened, I felt that I gave more and more of myself away. And to protect myself, I would create these false lies so that I would be able to get up the next morning and just function in society. And I'm learning that I don't need that armor anymore. And unfortunately, just like yourself, I never prosecuted because I didn't know I could.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, most of the people that I had issues with are past and gone. So I have to do this on my own. And I do think that there is a healing thing. Like you said, you shared it with the state. Is that correct?
Yeah, I
You said
reported the person to the state.
that in itself is healing. You did an action to take care of it. And maybe that's all that was needed for you, and that's perfect. Everyone's journey is individual and unique. And we cannot create an ABCD step on healing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people want that though. I
They
mean,
want
our
a generic
society,
solution.
exactly, and they want to quit. It's not. Your journey is going to be different than my journey, than Jen's journey, than anybody else's journey, because we have to go through it ourselves.
Yeah, 100% agree on that. Everyone's different and is unique. We're all made up of different things. There's going to be different solutions and not just one broad brushstroke to or a magic pill for someone. And it sucks that it's like that because it's going to take some time. And it's like, I know I'm not completely healed. And like you said, it's probably going to be a lifetime thing. But you just have to take one step each day to try
Right.
to get through it. And just
And
by
I think I'm sorry. I think we also should realize that, a sexually abused child, their brain has not yet fully developed.
mm-hmm.
And so what happens is the synapses start having to go a different direction than what I hate to say if the normal person's brain works. And so we're constantly finding a new pathway to think and to react, the fight and flight reaction. How do we do that? People always ask me, why didn't you fight back? Well, the first time I was so shocked that I didn't know what to do, and my body went into a froze state. I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't move at all. I was like, "Is this really happening?" And then when it was all over, it was like, "Oh my God, what just happened?" So my brain wasn't able to comprehend everything that was going on, and that's where I think people don't understand is that the adult whose brain is fully developed is responsible
Mm-hmm.
because the child isn't, because they can't function on this. This is well beyond their capacity. And there's scientific studies that show that. But as we grow and we're trying to find the new pathways in our brains, it is different. And that's why I think we all are so unique and our healing process will be unique. but people have got to understand that it's not something easily fixed.
Yeah. I wish it was, but it's not.
Yeah.
And one thing I still struggle with, and I know a bunch of other people do, is comparing our trauma to other people. Because sometimes we'll say, oh, well, it wasn't as bad as this person, or it wasn't as bad as that person. But now I'm starting to realize that is a way we're telling ourselves subtly that we don't deserve to heal or we don't deserve the help.
Oh, yeah. I will tell you, Nick, I'm so glad you brought that up because I watched your video when you were talking about your situation. And I said to myself, I don't know if I should go on because I mean, his is so much more so this and so much more this, and it affected him so differently than it did me. And I completely never accepted that it ever happened. And then until I was teaching high school and I was teaching sophomores at the age that I was when all the abuse started happening. And I had a kid come into my classroom and tell me that he had a boyfriend. And I was like, oh, great. I don't know how to handle this. I don't know what to do with you. And he said, well, that they were sexually active and everything, and that he was older. And I said, like, how old? And he says, he's around 35. And I went, whoa, wait.
Wow.
You have to report this. And he goes, yeah, I know you do. And I said, do your parents know? And he had a single mother. And he said, well, my mom and my grandma know, and they're okay with it. And I said, how can they be okay with this? And then he said, because they're paying for the groceries and the bills. And I just went, oh my God, I'm talking to myself basically. And then when I did go to report it, the assistant principal said, there's nothing we can do because the mother and the grandmother are aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
And this has been happening for a while. And he's been known to do this.
Yeah.
And that's it?
That's pathetic. And
I
feel like by him telling you that was a way of him asking for your help.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
I carried that guilt for a long time. And I felt like he was screaming for help. And I went to I reported the channel of reporting that I had to do as a teacher, and he went nowhere. So
yeah, and it makes you feel so defeated because there's only so much you can do. And it sucks to feel stuck in because you really just have to change the system, and that can't be done alone. That it has to take a whole group, and unfortunately, it usually has to involve money for one party.
You're right. Unfortunately,
so you have to make it profitable for the judges and attorneys and stuff to punish the abusers.
Or are they threatened in some way that they may fall within that investigation before they start to speak, which we saw with the U.S. gymnastics.
And surprisingly, defendants take ethics classes.
Wow.
Is there anything you'd like to plug, like anything you're participating in or a website or anything you want to shout out?
Well, I do have a website, which is anathletesilent.com. Excuse me, my voice is cracking. And you can find a lot of resources there, a lot of interviews that I have done, stories and stuff like that. I've got the 2 books that I would like to share for people. Surface Tension and Cracked Surface is a fiction about my life as a young kid diving and going to Norway and then going to California. And it kind of chronologizes, I can't even say the word now. It tells you how things happen. And then the first book is all about getting ready for the World Games and what I went through and how I had to try to justify everything. And then the second book is about what happened going to the university and how habits and behaviors repeated themselves because I had not gotten any help at the time. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to watch the journey weave through these 2 books. And then there's a 3rd book I hope to have out this year called Broken Surface, which goes into the Hollywood years and my time being in Hollywood and being on the soap opera and all the abuse that happened.
Awesome. If you could send me the name of those, then I'll post them in my community so they can see them. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and thank you so much for coming on today.
Nick, thank you, because there's something about you. I just want to say that it's just so open and so receptive that you just want to share with you, tell you everything.
Thank you.
So thank you for being that way.
Yeah, I've always, it's funny you say that because I've always felt like I've had this superpower where someone can meet me for like a day and then like they'll end up telling me like their deepest things. And I'm like, I've only known you for a day. It's like, I care, but yeah.
Then you might want to know all that anyway. But yeah, that's just have a superpower.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. And I hope you have a great week.
You too. Thanks a lot.
See
Nice
ya.
meeting you.
Guys, that was freaking awesome. I love hearing these survivor stories every time, and I'm trying to make some shirts so then we can. I'm trying to design some programs for donations. So if you do donate at certain tiers, you get certain things. So we're gonna do, if you donate over $25, then you get a free T-shirt. But I just need to get out designs and stuff for that because I'm doing this all by myself and it's a lot of work. But it's gonna be worth it because we can help so many people. And all of the money that comes from any donations or anything like that or social media ad revenue is all going back into this to help build a movement and a community specifically I can't speak, for gamers, and anyone is welcome. It doesn't matter who you are welcome. And I eventually want to do gaming community nights. So thank you so much, and these lives will be removed, but I do re-upload them as a video to both YouTube and Facebook, and then I do clips from them on TikTok, and you can follow all of those at Gamers Against Abuse, and we will see you guys next time. And I believe I'm trying to schedule an interview on the 22nd, so I will update you guys with that. You can join the Discord community. That will be, there should be a link on my YouTube, on any of my YouTube videos, there's a link to that. And I look forward to chatting with you guys, and I will see you next time.